was a great project. It's a great honor to be a speaker today, and congratulations to the graduates and their families. Teaching is a wonderful occupation. I'm thankful to be a teacher. We're in good company. Jesus was a teacher, Gandhi was a teacher. In some ways, we aspire to be teachers. It's almost a sacred word. I'd like to share some thoughts, my experiences over 36 years that might help you on your journey as teachers. I'd like you to think about, all of you, to think about a time when you've learned something powerful. We'll come back to that later. I'm going to be speaking about goals of teaching, key elements in achieving those goals, and strategies that I suggest you could use to achieve those goals also. So what are our goals as teachers? Well, for most people it's knowledge and skills, but we aspire to something more, and that is wisdom and judgment. I always say to my students when they come the first day, I'm hoping to change the way you think about things. I want to mess with your head. At the end of the year, I'm hoping that you have a little bit better judgment than when you came in. Obviously, part of that is teaching students to be more thoughtful, careful, more skeptical, and that's a key. Those are keys to improving judgment. But I'd like to focus first on three other things that I think are keys to learning in general and judgment in particular. These three are keys that have helped all of us. They need to be more prominent in schools. And what I'm speaking about, of course, is emotions, failures, and drugs. These three areas reside outside the logical part of our brain, outside of the prefrontal cortex. So how does this part of our brain work? And I was happy to hear the speaker talk about neuroscience. So in Jonah Learer's book, How We Decide, he has a section on a radar person on a ship during the first Gulf War, and he's watching the radar, and the ships are off the coast and they're bombarding the Kuwaiti area, and he sees a blip coming in, and it's coming in the direction from where the planes come back after bombing. So it might be a plane, and if he shoots a missile up, he's going to kill the pilot. Or it might be a missile, and the blip is the same. He can't tell. And he checks the altitude, and the altitude thing doesn't work, so he has exactly 40 seconds to figure out whether to fire a missile up to intercept it. If it's a missile, it's going to hit one of the ships and possibly sink it. He decided to fire the missile, and when they asked him about it, he said, I don't know why. Something seemed wrong about the blip. I don't know what it was. They brought in an expert from Ohio. It's actually somebody I know a little bit. And he went through the whole situation, and they discovered that what had happened is on an airplane, the radar picked it up on the third sweep. But with a missile, it picked it up on the first sweep. So he actually did not know why he made that decision. But the back part of his brain, the emotional part, the intuitive part, based on experience, based on repetition of looking at the screen and having errors happen, guided him to make that decision. It was not a logical decision consciously. So how does that intuitive part of your brain work? It works on trial and error. When you have something good happen, you get dopamine in your brain, a little shot of dopamine, and it says, this is good. And when you don't, it says, this is bad. And so our emotions are very much empirical. They happen by trial and error without us actually consciously knowing it. if you think about it, it's so appropriate that there's music people here, because if you're going to sing an aria, you can't think about that. It's done by practice. It's a different part of your brain, and it's a very powerful part of our brains. It's the same for hitting a golf ball, being an NFL quarterback, playing basketball. These are all things that we do without consciously knowing why we do them the way we do them. In fact, if you start thinking about it, you won't be able to perform. We actually have a term for this, choking. As a basketball player, you stand up that foul line, there's thousands of people, just throw it. Because you start thinking about it, you're probably going to miss. So that's where the drugs comes in, the dopamine. It's an on and off kind of thing, and it happens with experience. An expert in an area is defined as a person who's made every mistake possible in that area. It's the mistakes, and it's the going over the mistakes where people get better. So, how do we implement these things? How do we play to emotions, failures, and drugs? First, we need to give students as many opportunities as possible to make their own decisions, as in sports and music that I alluded to. That's how people improve. Essentially, making good decisions comes from making bad decisions. And we have to give students the opportunity to do that. Students need to have the experience of making choices and learn from them. The more students make choices, the more opportunity they have to develop humility. This is especially a problem in history. We look back at what people have done and say, boy, those people are really stupid. Why did they do that? It's a great exercise in Monday morning quarterback, or you might say it's the tricks the living play on the dead. And what I'm suggesting is that we move the students from Monday morning looking back on what other people have done and put them on Sunday afternoon and let them try it out themselves. And what I've found with my own students is they make mistakes that people in the past didn't make. They just make different mistakes. And that is a very humbling thing. History is an area where I think there's a lot of arrogance, where we look back and don't see the way they saw it. So I think that's important. One student commented after a simulation on the Vietnam War, "I don't think I'll ever judge presidents so harshly on their foreign policies again, because this is really hard." That's what I was hoping she would learn. Classes should be set up as problems as much as possible. That means that the teacher doesn't talk very much. Lectures are out. You have to think about, what are the students doing when you're lecturing? Other than drooling. I think you should, not just the music people, but I think every teacher should think of him or herself as a composer and a conductor. You compose the lesson, you let the students wallow around in it, try and figure it out, and you just conduct it as they go along. But they have to play the instruments. Second, we need to encourage students to make mistakes and reap the consequences. Set the class up so students can see mistakes as an opportunity to learn. Early on in the year, say, mistakes are fine. This is how you learn. Never praise a student for intelligence. Never say you're smart. The research is very clear on this. If you praise somebody for being smart, they'll take fewer risks, and they won't learn. Praise them for trying hard, praise them for tenacity, praise them for what they did, but don't praise them for their intelligence, because people take fewer risks after that. Asian students take 5 times as long on very difficult math problems as American students. They have tenacity. We need to breed that in our own students. Third, tell students that emotions are good. That's what makes us human. Serial killers don't have emotions. They see other people as objects. This person's going to stop me. I need to kill him. It's their emotions that they're missing. So I'm not saying that you cut out emotions. I'm saying you need to be conscious of emotions. You need to monitor your emotions. You want a student to be able to say, I'm getting angry, I need to count to 10. That's actually very good advice, to use that prefrontal cortex to monitor. Fourth, get students to reflect on their choices, decisions, projects, focusing on what they did well and poorly. Think of yourself now as a coach. You're guiding students in how to think about what they've done. We're aiming to build executive functioning. That is, to use the logical part of the brain to harness the tremendous learning power of the emotional part of the brain. There is no question that making decisions based on powerful emotions such as fear and impulse can get you into trouble. Just ask people who've maxed out their credit cards. And children, especially teenagers, don't have their prefrontal cortex is not developed as much as it's going to be. So they tend to make impulsive and sometimes terribly destructive decisions. Building reflection can help students reduce impulsive behavior. But again, there are many areas where intuition is the best guide. I never did a logical cost-benefit analysis when I married Mrs. O'Reilly. Fifth, don't label students. Sometimes they do some pretty funny things. You could take the humor part, but be careful not to label students. So these are wrong answers on essay tests, straight from the students. Gutenberg invented removable type in the Bible. Another important invention, was the circulation of blood. And Sir Francis Drake circumcised the world with a 100-foot clipper. Johann Bach died from 1750 to the present. Bach was the most famous composer in the world, and so was Handel. Handel was half German, half Italian, and half English. He was very large. Beethoven wrote music even though he was deaf. He was so deaf, he wrote loud music. Beethoven expired in 1827 and later died from this. Now, we get these all the time, and sometimes we're tempted to write, we think about it, we've never done it, but we think about writing sort of comments in light of those kinds of things, such as, this child has been working with too much glue. Or your child is depriving a village somewhere of an idiot. Okay, so we laugh sometimes. But it's really important not even to think it like that. Because when you think it, students pick it up. Be careful when you go in the faculty room of talking about students. They change. If you have children, you know that. They're different at 16 than when they were 15. So if a student's not doing well in some way or acting out, you say, well, but later he's probably going to be better. That's important. And be careful when people judge a whole class. I've got a quiet class B block and a rowdy class C block. That's really oversimplifying it because there's a lot of human beings in that classroom. So be careful not to stereotype your students. You've got to constantly be asking, how can I move this student along to improve his thinking? How can I help her mature? We always must treat students with respect and dignity, no matter what their behavior. Every child is a child of God. So students are like adults, except they don't have as much experience. Let's give students more experience, guided by teachers to reflect on their experiences and to learn humility. If we can improve their judgment, their wisdom, it's a gift for the lifetime. Congratulations again to the graduates.